Welcome to episode 5 in the KIPS Personal Training Application Podcast. In this episode, we have guest Jared Markiewicz. He is the owner of Functional Integrated Training in Fitchburg, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. Today, we're going to talk about topics that a new entry-level trainer can benefit from in terms of joining a team and what they can expect. For business owners, managers, for those looking to build a culture, we're going to dive into those topics as well and how to establish, evolve, and continually put out a quality service that members will want to sign up for and keep coming back to. Let's get to the episode. Before we go into talking about joining a personal training staff or joining a new facility, I think a key important aspect to talk about is the hiring process. Jared, for yourself, is there something that you're looking for when you're trying to hire somebody? Might it be their education, personality, experience, anything that you're looking for that, wow, that person will be great for my staff?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because it's definitely changed over 7.5 years of business. And I think early on, it was probably what a lot of us, as we set up our mission to be the best coach possible or the best candidate for a job possible, and then evolve into like a business owner who you're looking for somebody, that it was always about education. You know, how much do you have a degree in exercise science or kinesiology, maybe a master's degree? What certifications do you have? How many certifications do you have? And I think those things are important, but as time has gone on, I've realized if you've done your due diligence, and again, this is coming from a business owner's perspective, if you've done your due diligence, you should be able to teach somebody who's a good fit for your team and your culture the X's and O's, the how do you train, the style, provide them resources, books, send them to certifications, give them any raw materials you can give them to have them study and learn, quiz them if necessary, those kinds of things. So education is big. I think that because it's ongoing, it's not something that's super critical to me taking somebody on as a initial staff member. We'll talk about that a little bit later too, in regards to how we approach internships and apprenticeship. One of the big things that I recognize now as we've moved forward and we really have an established culture is personality is probably the biggest and most important thing. I want to not only have them send us a response via email, meaning can they just do that basic thing and do basic check the box kind of tasks that I would expect of somebody to do. It's a good employee, period. I also want to talk to them over the phone. Do they have good phone etiquette? Do they sound like somebody that I would want to talk to on the phone if I was on the other side of it? Maybe being a potential client or even a client of ours that calls into the gym. And then meet them in person and do an in-person interview to see like, how does this person present? Do they come in, clean cut, looking the part? Do they come in disheveled? And by looking the part, I don't mean, fit. That's not necessarily what I mean, but just professional. Like we treat our staff members as fitness professionals. We are in a professional industry. We aren't in a hobby industry. We aren't in an industry where the expectation is, well, this is like what I do on the side, but I have other real job. Like this is a real job. This is a real profession. And I was just actually having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I've always treated it that way. And so I've always had the expectation for that when they come into my gym, that they should be treating the interview like a professional interview, not like, oh, I'm just coming in and I'm just gonna, show off that I can do some, 315 pound squats and throw some weights over my head, and because of that, I should get the job. Like that's I think it's important that someone values fitness, and it's obvious they value fitness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are shredded. I mean, and I've had both. I've had great coaches who also look the part tremendously. I've had some terrible coaches or even interns, I guess, more along the lines that I would, after the fact, never have hired them. But coming in, it's like, man, like this guy is going to impress clients when he walks in the door because of how he looks, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's a good coach. And that's where I think the idea of, if I'm hiring a professional coach, they have to have the personality where they can develop relationships. They know how to develop trust. And you know, we can probably all say, anybody in the service industry can say they're all amateur psychologists, right? Uh, but really just the ability to read situations and understand that stuff. And I think there's a lot being done right now in our industry on that front that,
Yep.
for a long time, I think the best in the industry have done sort of intuitively, but now is starting to become more like, hey, this is what has to be happening. Like, there is an art and there's a science to this thing, and the art part is basically the psychology to a certain degree.
Yep.
And we have to have at least an understanding or a basic human ability to have a conversation, develop relationships, build trust out of the gate. Certainly with somebody who's going to employ you, right, in an interview setting, but even further down the road, as you watch somebody and observe someone who's now on the floor, maybe not necessarily coaching, but on the floor engaging with your clients. Like, you want somebody, or we want somebody as a coach who, well, I'm not a coach yet. I don't have I haven't earned the right to be able to step on the floor and instruct somebody or run a warm up. But I'm not just going to stand off to the side with my arms crossed. I'm going to go and engage and say, hey, I'm, Jared. I'm a new intern here, and I just want to know more about you. Why are you here? What brought you here? How long have you been here? What's your goals? Like, are your goals different now than since you started? Have things changed in your life? Just start asking questions and engaging with our clients, because if they can develop that trust early on, it makes it much easier to offer them opportunities to coach once they have developed that competency. But if they haven't developed that trust, then you can know all you want to know. You can be crazy book smart, but applying it to someone who doesn't know you and doesn't trust you, it won't work.
Yeah. And you make such a good point with education, personality. And I think as professionals, and as you and I, we have degrees in the exercise science realm. And I think at first, I know that I can personally say that I was biased in terms of, okay, education is important.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have these degrees. I have to have these certifications, and I'm going to make more money because I have them. But it's in the application part that is where the money's made. And further along those is the personality. I've told interns, I've told entry-level trainers how important that you got to have the interpersonal skills in order to sell them something, be able to tap into what is that person looking for. If you just take them through a workout, don't really learn anything about them, don't really try to see what they want, what they're looking for. Why are they going to want to invest in you? Why are they going to want to spend potentially thousands of dollars on your services? Your degrees and your certifications might look great on the wall, but it's a relationship. I think at one point, and these are just guesses and really just, things to make a point, but I've said before that personality, interpersonal skills are 70% of personal training, and 30% is education. You got to be able to back it up at the end of the day, have a great program that's individualized for the client sitting in front of you, and make sure that you're safely taking them through these exercises. But again, you got to have that ability to talk with them, because you even mentioned you are almost a psychologist. You're going to be listening to them. So you got to have those skills, be able to build off what they said to you, and even have to deal with at times if they're going through something, this person might want to talk to you about that. So these are all things that they're typically not in an entry-level certification manual.
Yeah.
I know that from experience and working for a variety of educational companies, exercise psychology is a chapter that's being added in because of how important it is, but it's so much more. And hopefully we can see more of that type of education being developed. I know before we started this podcast, we actually talked a little bit about that. And this is the kind of stuff that entry-level trainers, you gotta start early on that. Think about what do you look like? How are you going to approach the hiring process, whether you're applying for 5 jobs, 3 jobs, or hopefully just one job that you think this is the one that I really want to work at. How are you going to approach that? Don't just think, okay, once I get clients, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and everything's going to work out. Think about first the hiring process. What are you going to wear? How are you going to approach the phone call when they call to set this up? Are you going to follow up with the email? These are all the little things that someone like Jared is looking for. So I think we unpacked quite a bit right there. And I know that I expanded more than I normally do just because it was such a great little tidbit. But I think something that I think you've probably dealt with several times is the experience versus education question when going into hiring somebody. Do you, in your opinion, and from your experiences, education experience, where do kind of you lie on that spectrum?
It's a great question. And I mean, that really, I think is something that, again, has been an evolutionary thing for me. Although I guess I really would say from early on, and I think I've had a really unique experience. Maybe I haven't, but I feel like I've been lucky and blessed to a certain degree, because I've been around really good business owners, similar valued business owners, for a few years before I really jumped into owning my own business. So not only was I getting the perspective from people who been there, done that kind of idea, but continue to, right? Because if my business is 7 years old, well, their business is 10 years old or 12 years old. So now, things that arise with me, well, I've already maybe seen them or talked to them about those things or helped problem solve those. So it helps me too. But when it comes to experience, one thing I've always felt was that I almost prefer somebody who's green. I prefer somebody
Mhm.
who's just getting started in the industry, who has the background, the understanding, the education, but doesn't have the experience yet. And because I think that there might be times when, either it's because of our culture or because of what we know, and what we do know is that there are many different ways to get somebody fit, to get somebody strong, to get somebody physically prepared for, various events or sports or athletics and that kind of stuff. And being able to teach them our way has always been, in my
Yes.
mind, more effective. But the one thing that I think, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you are just getting into the industry, or you're looking to get your exercise science degree and you're in school, the thing that I would highly suggest, and kind of one of those things that's starting to become like almost a prerequisite for me, where if I could have my choice, I would say, okay, if you're coming in here and you have a resume and you have this and this and this on it, if you don't have experience in a service industry, like a
Mhm.
barista at a coffee shop, or a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant, or you haven't otherwise done free labor, so volunteer hours, or people who have done like grad assistant type work. If you haven't been exposed to that yet, I almost want you to be, before you come work for me. I
Mhm.
want you to have had that an opportunity to be on that side of it and recognize like what it takes. Like, my job every day is to make the person across from me happy, irrelevant of what I'm providing for them, selling them, serving them with. My job is to make the person across from me happy. And when they start to understand, like, hey, these skills I learned in this other service industry are going to bode really well when it comes to me coaching somebody, because we're trying to make our clients better, but a lot of it is having them leaving feeling better, both physically and
Yeah.
emotionally, than when they walked in the door.
It-
And that doesn't mean you're
yeah.
constantly berating them and you're constantly, working to get more out of them in a way that can sometimes come off as negative or, um, kind of commandeering, as opposed to, hey, like, how can we make this work for you? And being able to ask those questions and have that is kind of a core competency, but it's a relationship core competency that is nothing that's being talked about in exercise science, literature, or, the kinesiology, exercise physiology course, or the advanced exercise physiology course, or all those things. I mean, they're just not in there. People aren't talking about those things, but they are critical to not just early
Yes.
success, but ongoing success in our industry.
Yeah, and I can tell from working with different gym chains how some type of business sales where they talks into even just the basics, because those are the things that they want when they're hiring somebody. How is your ability to talk someone through a difficult situation and ultimately sign them up as a client? But I want to take a step back on getting somebody green, because I know that when I was in my undergraduate program, and at first I didn't quite understand it. It took a bit to understand why was I doing these internships. I had a requirement to do traditional and corporate internship hours, and at first, when you're in college, you're like, I want to have a good time. I want to enjoy the college experience, and I have to do 200, 250 hours of each of these. This is going to take forever. But not only are you building your resume, but you are getting experience that's going to pay off down the line. And for me personally, one of those internships ended up becoming a
Yeah.
career. When so when you are in your undergraduate program, having that ability to take advantage of those, because you'd never know where it's going to lead to. And after I graduated, I ended up starting up a boot camp, a fitness boot camp, and I tapped into that, the internships, and with the university that I went to, I was able to pull interns. And just how we were talking about with hiring somebody green and teaching them your ways, I will say that I had both, where I hired somebody that was not an intern, and then I've also done the path where I hired somebody that was an intern. And nothing against the person that was not one of my interns, but the intern already knew what was expected, what are the main missions, or I'll say the culture that's a part of the boot camp, and how every little thing is supposed to run. There wasn't a lag in terms of having someone that was more experienced that came in and that they kind of wanted to do their own thing, put their own touch on it. The intern that became a contractor, an instructor, was able to jump in without a hitch. They just knew. They knew everything that was expected of them because they'd already gone through that process. So being able to put somebody in a onboarding process is something that I would say is also a plus for personal trainers. I have said before to entry level trainers, if you have the opportunity to work at a high end gym that it already has an onboarding process already ongoing. And the example I give is Equinox, is that their onboarding process is top notch, and they have so many locations, they have so many trainers because it is top notch. The education, the application that they put into each instructor is all there, so that if you want to stay with them, great. They pay you well. You're going to be able to build. You can make a career out of it. But if you want to leave after that, after you've gone through their onboarding process, you're going to have a leg up on other trainers because you've already gone through this onboarding process that's top notch and be able to apply that in different situations. So with your own facility and going back, we'll say 7 years, do you remember that hiring process, or even when you had somebody in mind? No, I want to hire this person. Do you remember those types of questions that you had for yourself? Is this the right person, or was there somebody already that you knew that you wanted to hire?
No. When I started out, it was well, I'm working 90-hour weeks. I probably need to figure out someone to hire to offload some of this work on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, back to the education and learning from other individuals. The first person I attempted to hire was an admin, and went through three within the first year and a half. Uh,
Wow.
for various reasons. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
of those three, two were probably really good, but I also didn't really know how to hire an admin. I mean, I didn't know what I
Mm-hmm.
really needed for that because it wasn't what I knew. I mean, I came in to owning a business going, well, um, I know that eventually I want to have a business that is in this industry, but I don't want it to own me. I want to be able to have a wife, have kids, be able to be available and with them. And anybody who's done work in this
Hmm.
industry for more than a year knows, when do you train and when do you work? When people aren't working, before and after.
Yep.
So if you want to have a family and kids and that kind of thing, you either need to be a part of an organization that respects that and finds ways to do block scheduling in a way that's conducive to having the life of a normal 9 to 5er, um, or accept that. And there's certainly people who do, and that's just what they choose to value. But I value, always have valued, the ability to have a business, have the means to support my family while also being able to be a part of them. I don't want that to. I don't want the means to support them to replace the time I would like to have with them. Um,
Hmm.
and so when I got to that point of hiring, it was really just a matter of, well, you know, I think I ended up hiring the first guy, not the first guy, but the first candidate that I interviewed. But it was also because he and I had met at a seminar, IFAST, down in Indianapolis. So Mike Robertson and Bill Hartman's gym. And so I already knew he was seeking out really good quality education. So that was a bonus for me. Um, and he, to a lot of degrees, was a person that I was not. He was really rigid on details and structure and the black and white. I was a relationship guy. I could build trust quickly, but the back end, the checking the boxes, getting all the tasks done, I would let that slide more often than not. And so he was a really good yin to my yang. And actually, he's still part of my staff. So, you know, let's say now, let's just call it 7 years later. He's still part of my staff. He's one
Hmm.
of our head coaches, full time head coaches.
Nice, nice. With the hiring process, and even after somebody gets up to speed, is there an expectation that I know that we're going to jump into more of the culture building and what that goes into, but what are some of the expectations that you have set aside that are okay, these are the main things of our business that we want to make sure that we're doing on a daily basis? Because I know that these are also tidbits that someone just getting into the industry, they're going to want to put in their toolbox and be able to pull out when they get onto a staff. What are those kinds of
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. I mean, so, and even with him, yes, we hired him. Or I guess at this point, it was kind of more, I hired him. It wasn't a we thing at that point quite yet. But he still went through my internship process. Now, granted, it wasn't nearly as developed and thorough as it is now, but we had a process because I still wanted that buffer, that time frame to decide, is he going to fit in well with our culture? We already, I mean, I think the moment that you open up a business, you have a culture established, and part of it, you decide if you have a culture, what your culture is, or you let somebody else, like your clients, decide for you. And so I think it's important you establish that right out of the gate. But
Hmm.
um, but we didn't want somebody to just come in and not be the right fit in terms of engaging with our clients. Now he wasn't me, and it's early on. It's hard for a new business owner to offload some of the training and that kind of stuff onto somebody who isn't them. But ultimately, if you hire for the right, kind of core values, uh, the
Hmm.
person who's not you probably is one of the better hires to have, because you might gain some clients who uh, kind of align with the new person that you bring on as a coach, that maybe wouldn't be the
Hmm.
best relationship for you, but because you have the other personality on your staff, like all of a sudden, okay, um, there's a reason for me to keep training, keep working with these guys, because he gets me, he understands me, or she, or whatever. I'm just, again,
Yeah.
kind of our example of hiring a guy first. But in regards to the expectations, I mean, we have a lot of things in place that start with the internship process. But as you get involved into becoming an actual coach for us, we start with a job description. But then there's layers that go beyond that, because my theory is, if we're expecting our clients, and we say this to them all the time, when they first come in the door and sit down with us, and we're talking about a 12-month contract, we expect you to evolve. This is not the typical big box gym where we're hoping to take your money and never see you again. We expect you
Mhm.
to evolve. We expect you to get better. We expect you to set goals, hit them, and then reestablish new, more challenging goals. And yes, life can get in the way and progress might stall or get derailed partially, but that's our job as coaches to make sure we pull you back onto track and hold you accountable. Um, but if we're expecting evolution out of our clients, then we can't stay stagnant as coaches either. So we need to keep seeking
Yes.
out new educational opportunities. We do weekly, we call them trainer talks, but they're basically in services where not only am I standing up there as the training director, the CEO of the business, talking about various topics, but every quarter the expectation is every coach on my staff is assigned 1 week to do an in-service themselves to the rest of the staff, because I not only want them to understand things that I've brought through with our internship curriculum and our apprenticeship curriculum and resources and books that I've provided, because they don't own that. They read it because I've told them
Mhm.
to, because it's part of what they're assigned to do, but they don't take ownership in that necessarily. When you say to somebody, I want you to present on a topic that you recognize as relevant to us as a staff understanding more about, or because of certain people that you coach, or that we're all going to coach at some point. For example, pregnant women, we have a lot of couples in our gym. So with that
Mhm.
comes pregnancy or postpartum. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, those are important topics to cover that I don't necessarily feel like I need every single coach of mine to go and get the Girls Gone Strong, Mom's Gone Strong certification. Um,
Mhm.
but if one of my coaches gets it and then can bring to us, here, these are the really relevant things that everybody should know, and then if we need to dig deeper with it, that's when it comes and says, hey, okay, well, um, I know a lot about this, but I'm not sure I know the answer well enough. And I'm pretty positive that Veronica is going to have either a really good answer or the guidance to be able to say, okay, this is your problem. I need you to go see this specialist. Um, and we can
Mhm.
send the person internally to one of our coaches who is certified for postpartum um, training, and not not just the physical but the mental aspect of it too. So I think that the ongoing expectation from an education standpoint is we have to keep growing and evolving. Um, and then from a basic standpoint, I mean, we have expectations, and we just over the course of the last quarter and a half have really created this where it's an all-encompassing document. We call it enhancing client experience, and it basically has laid out our bronze level, our silver level, and our gold level objectives. The bronze level stuff is things that we would otherwise call like tight expectations. Showing up on time, making sure the gym is open and closed the same way every single time. The things that are pretty standardized, that are pretty cut and dried, and need to happen all the time. So the experience for our clients is no different day to day, week to week, morning to afternoon, right? But then there's also things like
Mhm.
silver level where it's like, okay, if the bronze level stuff is the stuff that we need to do to just make sure that the standard of our experience is the same, the silver level is the stuff that's going to continue to set us apart so that people leave our gym and go and have coffee with their friends. They go back to work. They go home to their husband or wife and say, God, I train at the best gym in Madison, par none. Like, I'll put that gym against anybody. I'll put the coaches against anybody. It's the silver level stuff that's going to help us establish and continue to establish that in the minds of our clients, right? Because the cheapest and easiest marketing is referrals, right? Um,
Mhm.
and then the gold level stuff is stuff that it's kind of cool, but like we set it up where we don't really necessarily have that established yet. Because for me, the gold level stuff is if we get to the point where that silver level stuff becomes pretty much the bar standard, and we're always seeking to set the bar higher or jump over the bar, when we get to that gold level, the gold level is people come to us from across the nation and go, and I'm not talking about clients, but like coaches come from across the nation and go, man, the culture you guys have created. I think of like Martin Rooney and Train for Warriors. Like um, the culture you've created is something that, like, how can I just come and spend a week at your gym and just immerse myself in what you guys are doing and try and figure out how I can make that happen at my gym? Like that to me is the gold level
Hmm.
stuff. And so we're not there yet, but it's on the horizon, and it's understanding from my staff, like that's where we're trying to go to. And so we can't sit on our laurels and be satisfied with, well, we're checking all the boxes. That's not enough. We need to go higher, and we need to be
Yeah.
seeking out something that's way beyond what any of us right now can envision, because that's the way that I approach our business. And I want to instill the idea of ownership of the gym to each and every one of my staff members, because ultimately, when it comes right down to it, if I'm running the business, that is a well over a 40+ hour a week job. I need them on the floor providing the same, if not better, experience than I could have as a coach.
Yeah. And I think the first part to come back to for me is the basics, your bronze level stuff that I will say that if there's a staff of 10 trainers and you're looking to see how many just do the basics of being a professional personal trainer, the bronze level stuff, I would maybe say out of 10, 2 or 3 and a staff of 10 in a normal, we'll say traditional setting gym. And it's those trainers that just do the basics that are setting themselves apart, and they get a reputation for that. They get a reputation that they're doing the basics of showing up on time, being able to modify for their clients, being able to shut down a gym if needed, if it's that type of gym. And I can tell from experience that that was one of the things that when I was a personal trainer, I was training more people, or even doing it part time. People always recognize that I just did the basics very well. I was able to. I always planned to show up 30 minutes early, whether I was teaching a group exercise class, working for a session, because you never know. Somebody might message, "Hey, can you come 15 minutes early?" Yep, I'm already here. I'm ready for you. If you're doing a group exercise class, you show up 30 minutes early, you're setting up, you're making sure that everything is in top notch for your clients. The experience for them is top notch. And those things go a long way. People notice them. You might think that you're doing work that is not necessary, you're not getting paid for it, but people notice it, and they will tell other people. Word of mouth, referrals, these things will all come back because of the experience and what you do, the extra work that you put into it. So I like how you were talking about the gold level not even being established yet. I feel like that is part of your culture of your gym, that we want to achieve something that we're not there yet, but it's something that we could strive for, and we're going to uncover these things together. We'll be able to establish something that this is going to separate us apart in the whole country, that somebody's going to want to come and learn about what we're doing. But I think that that's a part of right there in terms of the education, the experience with the staff, and the expectations that you have of them. It's about continually evolving and being able to provide something that might not even be there yet. You guys want them to strive for that, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about that, I mean, the basics, and it when you brought that up, and I think you have a lot more experience in seeing the broader array of what's out there, right? Like, I mean, you get to the point of running your own business and running a brick and mortar business. I mean, I'm immersed in my own little world every week, every day of the week, to various degrees. And it's almost frustrating to me that that's become the expectation for our industry, which is why I think podcasts like this and people doing what you're doing are great. Is people need to understand that we're still not treated like a professional industry. This is still treated as a hobby, and
Yep.
it's ridiculous because I have so many good friends, colleagues that are running incredible businesses where when they come back, or where we talk about opportunities we've had to speak to corporations, to Fortune 200, 300, 500 companies, stuff like that. And, even like pitch them ideas for educational opportunities. They go, man, that stuff is great. We've never discussed that stuff. We need that stuff here. Like, can we bring you in to talk about this? It's like, this is happening in our level. This is happening in these little tiny, whatever you want to call podunk gyms across the country, but
Mhm.
it's not being recognized as like that's the industry that we're in. And so I think it's important
Yeah.
to understand like there's going to be a difference when you walk in the door. When a new coach walks into a door of a facility, you're going to understand pretty quickly, and it won't necessarily be the equipment that they have or like how new the paint is or how fluffy and white and soft the towels are and that kind of stuff. Like it's going to be the people that you interact with, the feeling you get being there, the emotions that you not just experience yourself but see experienced by clients on a daily basis or by staff on a daily basis. Like, man, if people are smiling and laughing over the course of the day, that's probably a good place to be. If people aren't smiling and laughing in an environment
Yeah.
where it's like, man, exercise should make you happier, or you should at least be attempting to make people happier through exercise, then get the heck out, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it is. It's the idea that we're constantly evolving, and none of us really know what our glass ceiling is. So why set expectations for a glass ceiling? Like, why even put that out there? Why not say, hey, there is this gold level thing. I don't even know what it is. Heck, you don't even know what it is. And that's kind of the cool part, is that this ever outstanding goal is just something that's somewhat arbitrary, but also somewhat like, let's explore. Let's see where we go. Let's
Yeah.
see what we can really excel in, and see where that takes us. And see then if there's opportunities for us to explore that route more, and really establish again those super niches into things where people see, hear about it, and go, man, I feel like I just have to go. I have to go there, because it maybe is not only the best
Mhm.
gym, but they're doing this incredible job, with being able to get people healthy, but using barbells as a way to do so. So the what's been consistently demonized as um, deadlifts can hurt your back and overhead presses can hurt your shoulders. Well, they're doing this stuff people who have hurt shoulders and hurt backs, and they're getting them healthy and then getting them stronger. And if people are just becoming rock stars, like something's different about that. I need to go explore that. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
that's where I think
Yeah.
um, as the leader or as the manager, um, establishing, hey, here's the expectations and making them clear. And that's one thing that I've always struggled with, and this is a big reason why we're getting into this right now as a staff, is doing a really good job of establishing, here's what needs to happen every single day without failure, and managing to that. Because when that stuff is being done by everybody on staff, that becomes the expectation. Then instead of me having to micromanage it all the time, people will call each other out, right? People
Yes.
will become managers of themselves to a certain
Yes.
degree, and then the higher level stuff can start to happen. But it's just like exercise, right? Man, if you can't do a basic body weight squat in your initial screen, then how the heck would we expect to be able to put a bar on your back, put some weight on that bar, and have you do a good quality squat and get any training effect out of it? You know, we gotta start
Yep.
at the level and the point that you're at as a client. But the same thing goes for coaching. And the more and more I realize, and the more and more that I get into the leadership role and the management role, I think about how can I make the way that I approach coaching movement apply to coaching staff, to managing staff, to
Great way.
coaching
Yeah.
up our people on how to build the business to something that's successful, not just for me as a business owner because I make the big bucks, right? Because we all know that's not true. But that everybody can be successful the way they want to be within our infrastructure.
And there's a little bit of, I'll say, exercise psychology in having this unattainable, not unattainable, but a higher level of achievement for the staff, this gold level. I remember back when I did an exercise psychology class for my undergraduate, and we're talking about, and people most likely know the movie of the Friday Night Lights movie, but we
Yeah.
had to read the text for it. And a great point that has always stuck with me for coaches is if you set the bar at something, for them it was, we're going to go undefeated, we're going to win state. And what happens when you don't
Hmm.
you can't reach that anymore? For this football team, they had they lost their star running back and ended up losing a couple games, and so the undefeated goal is already gone. And then now it's in question of,
Hmm.
we're going to win state for them. So with a staff, if you are setting something and, okay, here are my expectations, here's my gold, here's my silver, here's my bronze, and if they reach all those, okay, we're good, we already did it, we don't need to strive for anything further. By having a gold level that isn't defined yet, that you guys want to explore together and be able to uncover something that's new, that, and it's not just sake of saying you're going to do something new to be refreshing or be able to say you're creating new things. It's a fact that you guys want to achieve something that is different and that puts the expectations much higher for the industry as a whole. So I say that because this keeps the staff constantly wanting to achieve something
Hmm.
that they don't even know yet, but they want to uncover it. They want to do all these kinds of things together, be able to ensure that the rest of the staff is doing the bronze and the silver things already, that's just second nature for them. We do these things, we do them well, but we want to strive for even more. So I think it's really great to point those out. But then I'll say, for our business owners, our fellow gym owners, and also people that run or want to get into managing. And we've kind of touched on a little bit of this stuff already. And I wanted to ask you, how did you come to your managing style? I have a guess already that there's an evolution of it, but were there any kinds of people you looked up to or you wanted to replicate in that process?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure when I started out, I didn't manage. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't managing. I can tell you that for sure. Um, but that's the nature of our industry. I mean, a lot of people that get into this and become business owners of a fitness business, they don't do it because it's this massively lucrative, high return on investment, high profit margin type of business. I mean, none of these things are exploding overnight. I mean, people don't venture capitalists aren't seeking out the next, local personal training business as a way to grow their portfolio, right? Um, a lot of us are just the
Hmm.
technician who realizes, like, hey, I want more. I want to be able to own what I'm doing. I want to be able to explore the idea of owning a business that enhances the opportunities I have based on, like, my skills as a technician, right? Um, I mean, honestly, the first book I read, and I still reference back to it, and it still reverberates, and I hear it from many different people in many different industries, is The E Myth. The E Myth was a book that was recommended to me when I first was talking about, or really having the legit discussion of, do I want to get into business, and understanding, going from the technician all the way up to the entrepreneur, and what that actually looks like and what that actually entails. It certainly doesn't do a whole lot of justice to the steps that need to be taken in the process. Um, but I would say
Hmm.
that really what it's come down to is experience has been the best learning tool I've really received from a management standpoint, because I've been a part of mastermind groups and been coached and managed through those things. I've been a part of different um, educational sites and programs, and learned how to be managed and or manage those things. I've continued to evolve a staff and leaned on friends and colleagues and people who I consider to be experts in our industry on how to manage them and bringing problems and collaboratively solving them and those kinds of things. So my managing style has definitely evolved. And, I think it's one of those things where when you when you're really good at being a technician, you always tend to default back to that because it's easy, right? We all like the easiest path possible, and I don't care what anybody says. Well, I like to take the hard route. That's bogus. At some point, you just can't keep pushing that hard, and you try and find an easier route, an easier path. And for a lot of coaches turned business owners, they default back to that technician side, which is why they end up not retaining staff well, is they just want to step in and do it again themselves. They want to keep coaching themselves because that's what they know best. They don't know management, and they're not willing to have the difficult conversations and seek out growth and knowledge in that field, which feels definitely feels different. Uh, but again,
Hmm.
mentorship is huge in that regard. I have been a part of Fitness Revolution and their organization pretty much actually since before the beginning. I was actually a franchisee with them before the gym was actually opened up because they were helping me negotiate my lease and just figure out the things I needed to do to open a business up in the first place. But over the course of the years, I've been exposed to a number of different managerial trainings through them, things that they've learned and then they've passed along to us that have been massive because there are things that I myself could learn from, but also as I brought on staff, like I have an operations manager. As I brought on the operations manager, she had experience in managing in other industries, which is huge, but managing in fitness
Hmm.
is different, and managing the people that are staff in a fitness business tends to be different, um, because there's a certain level of informal management that's a little bit different than the 9 to 5 desk job type of management, right? Um, and so having
Yeah.
resources to provide her and say, hey, I know you know this stuff in terms of just the basics, nuts and bolts. But here's the kind of the specifics of how I've been approaching management, how I want you to take and learn this stuff, and then let's have a conversation about it, because there's a good chance that you're going to pull things different out of that than I did. And between the two of us, we can kind of start to create and establish this is how this is going to be approached. And then communication to me is huge. I mean, like I think from a managerial standpoint, the two things that I continually try to do is keep communication between my staff and I as open and honest as possible, in as many aspects as possible. I mean, even in regard to the books, there's things that I'm willing to share on a regular basis as to where our profit margins are and what our revenue is and new clients and all those things. Because I think the more you can make them a part of the process, the more they feel like um, they can actually have an impact on the bottom line for the business and therefore what money goes into their pockets too. Um, but then the other thing too that
Yeah.
that I think is sometimes really easy to get to fall into the trap of as a manager is you you consistently will recognize when somebody's doing something wrong, but oftentimes we're missing amazing opportunities to recognize when someone's doing something right or someone's doing something
Hmm.
way above expectations, and you start to write it off because they consistently do it as just their standard norm. But man, I don't know about you, but when someone like comes up to me and genuinely says, man, you did a really good job, like that feels awesome. Because if you actually did a really good job and then you get like affirmation of that, that feels incredible. And if you as a manager can do that,
Yeah.
I think the idea of being friends with your staff isn't great, but your staff will have a very healthy respect,
Hmm.
and you'll have a good strong relationship and have the ability to have hard conversations without every conversation that's challenging feeling like, well, at the end of this I'm going to terminate you. um, it's a lot easier to have those conversations, those hard ones, when you've had conversations saying, dude, you have just been outstanding in terms of following up and making sure that everyone feels like they got a great experience and were touched before they left the session. Like high five, knuckles, like hugs if it's necessary, holding conversations afterward when necessary. I just feel like you've done a fantastic job of engaging with our clients and making them feel special before they left. So the last memory they have of you is feeling great about the workout they did and the coach that they have. You tell somebody that when it's genuine and it's true, it goes a long way of making those hard conversations much, much easier.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the evolution of being a manager, it comes through, I agree that it comes through the experience, but the willingness to learn this stuff. I think listening to you talk about it, you were willing to learn from different organizations, take different feedback, and be able to evolve your style so that it fit something that was you and unique to your own situation. I know that from my own experience and being a young manager in certain different organizations. One of them was one that I owned, and then later when I was hired as an executive for a different education company, there were different experiences and different staff was there. And I will say that I learned from prior, I don't want to call them mistakes, but experiences that I didn't quite enjoy. I think that starting off as a young manager, you look at your situations that you've already had. What jobs have you had already? How did those go? What was my manager like? Okay, I think that I have to replicate that because this person was already a manager and I want to do the same with my own business. And I will say flat out that I didn't like it. I was a little bit strict, too strict, and it wasn't me. It was out of personality for me. And so later on, taking things that I learned, and they were exactly what you said, really working on communication, but also taking situations, hard situations, and being able to communicate them. Those were the things that later came back. And I can, off the top of my head, I know of two experiences that I had with some employees that they were tough situations, but each time they were turned into educational scenarios that they actually thanked me later for them because they understood that I was there for them and that really it's not about, okay, I'm going to fire at the end of this. And I think that unfortunately that they were put in situations by uh, other executives that they thought that every serious conversation is going to end with them being threatened, their job security. But they understood that that's not where I was coming from. It was, I want to help you improve and be there for you so that you understand that let's all get better together. And I think that those are big things that we miss as being a manager or understanding that the communication factor goes so much further, whether it's positive, negative, or tough conversations. Those things go so much further than um, the fear that exists with those types of things. So as we start to wind down on the podcast, and we're going to get to the podcast takeaways right now. And I think the best thing that we're going to come back to for personal trainers is going to be the advice that you can give them on going into a new position and integrating with an existing staff. I think that those are the things that some trainers, they might be hesitant or they might have prior experiences that were negative, and so they go into a new job and they are unsure how things are going to go. But Jared, I want you to give some advice, some tips, or even things that you've seen with new trainers coming in, and then that kind of advice, but then integrating with the
Yeah, I mean, I
staff.
think that integrating with staff is always going to be a challenging thing, right? Because you're walking into something that already exists. It's not like it's being created for the first time with you, and so that's always a challenge, right? And you always feel like you're the outsider looking in, and so um, the reality is that we are predisposed to be a part of a team or want to be a part of a team. Um, Part of that predisposition though is that your values should align, right? um, I think it's important as a trainer when you first come in, when you get the opportunity to talk to staff and not just the person potentially hiring you, whether it's like a hiring manager, whether it's the owner of the organization or training director, whoever it might be, but talking to the coaches, talking to other people on staff, the administrative people, um, you know, if they have janitors and that kind of stuff, whoever, but ask them about like what's the culture here? What are the core values here? What's the mission statement? Um, Oftentimes, businesses in general, but certainly fitness businesses, maybe those questions haven't been answered in terms of exactly what the clear vision is and the mission statement is. But what you should be getting from the staff when you hear the answers to those questions is similar responses person to person in terms of like either kind of their core values or like what they understand as the core values of the gym, or what they feel emotionally are the values of the gym. Because if you recognize that there's congruency there, and then also pretty much aligns with your values, it's probably a good fit for you. Simultaneously, if you are talking and you don't hear this congruency of similar values, or in the process of that, well, I believe this, but this person believes this, and this. When you start hearing things like that, and you hear those opinions, because that ultimately is probably a lot of behind the back talking, and sort of cliques being established, or already having some established cliques, and that can be
Hmm.
really challenging from a team environment standpoint. That's like when you need to get out as fast as possible, basically.
Yeah, I think, hardest part is when you hear those types of things, or even you get advice or from experience joining staffs of 40 different personal trainers and trying to be a good employee. Those are tough. You don't want to, of course, we all want to be liked. We all want to be a part of the team. But at the same time, you don't want to be negatively talked about. So I think that going into them and searching, asking questions, and at the same time, I like what you said about talking to different people on staff, because you never know where a lead can come from, or if you're known as just that friendly person, and you've met the operations manager, you've met the front desk staff, everybody that's a part of it. Why wouldn't they refer someone to you? Because you've already established that you can talk with them and work on those types of skills, and you treat everybody friendly. Those are really good points there. So before we sign off on here, Jared, can you give the audience some information on where you're located, your social media channels, and any of that good stuff about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so I personally am honestly not super active in social media and that kind of thing. Our business, however, is, and that's I produce a lot of the content for our business, and then it's pushed out by our social media manager and our marketing team. But my personal, so just Jared Markiewicz on Facebook, and then Coach J Mark on Instagram. But then our gym is Fit Madtown on Instagram, and then Functional Integrated Training. We're based out of Madison, Wisconsin, and so if you search that on Facebook, you can find it there. And if you're lucky enough, and I think you're cool enough, maybe I'll add you to our Fit family, and you can see our private Facebook page. That's just kind of generally meant for our clients, but I have some of my mastermind colleagues are a member of that too, so they can see the internal communication that goes on with us, because I think it's valuable for people that I trust to be a part of that and see that stuff, and know these are the inner workings of what's actually happening in our business, and how it can potentially be applied. Because hey, we're all trying to move in the same direction, and in my opinion, there should be a lot more collaboration than competition. And so
Yeah,
the best thing in my opinion to do is to bring minds together, and think and grow and learn together.
very good stuff. Very good stuff right here that we unpacked. And I tell you that this stuff is great for entry level trainers, business owners, or even somebody that wants to be a manager. Really great stuff, Jared. Thank you for coming on the podcast, talking about your business, the steps you took to grow it, and even developing a staff that is still achieving more. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it, Tyler.